For God is simplest of all, that the vast, harsh, gorgeous, dark, endlessly cold, empty, is also twinkle, twinkle in lyres and scorpions, a mother bear and her cub. That is it, isn't it? Balance, valence, zooming in, zooming out, this helpless worship of each other. The love that moves the sun and other stars. Only here, among the humans, this love with which we see everything. No meaning, but we make it. Before we come to the page, before the first word is ever written down or read or listened to, there is a longing to connect. My name is Charlie Mehrhoff, your host here at Before the Page, a podcast featuring poetry, parable, fiction, and words to echo our longing. Welcome, listeners and friends, to this our 24th episode of Before the Page. It is the 22nd of January, 2026. The theme of this episode, if one could call it a theme, is sanctity. Yet beyond any theme is that the words you are about to hear today needed to be given breath together. Now, this first selection comes from an expanded series of lectures given by the philosopher Abraham Heschel in 1963, from the pages of the book, Who is Man? Man is the only entity in nature with which sanctity is associated. Sanctity of human life is not something we know conceptually, established on the basis of premises. It is an underived insight. It is not a quality that man can bestow upon himself. It is either bestowed upon us or spurious. We come upon it first in pondering the mystery of another person's life, and subsequently in the realization that one's own life is not something acquired or owned. Life is something I am. What I have is mine. What I am not is not mine. Life is not my property. Being human involves being sensitive to the sacred. The objects regarded as sacred may differ from country to country, yet sensitivity to the sacred is universal. The acceptance of the sacred is an existential paradox. It is saying yes to a no. It is the antithesis of the will to power. It may contradict interests and stand in the way of satisfying inner drives. To our sense of power, the world is at our disposal to be exploited to our advantage. To accept the sacred is an acknowledgement that certain things are not available to us, are not at our disposal. However, it is a profound misunderstanding to think of the sacred in terms of negativity. Its negativity and separateness is but a protective screen for the positive aspect of the sacred. For accepting the sacred means not only giving up claims, but also facing a unique dimension of reality. What is the positive aspect of the sacred? Being a unique quality, it is not capable of being described in terms of any other quality. Just as beauty cannot be described in terms of goodness, the sacred is perceptible to the sense of the sacred. The beauty of a beautiful object is inherent in the object, whereas the sanctity of a sacred object transcends the object. Beauty is given with the nature of a thing. Sanctity is imposed on things. Beauty is in the form of an object, sanctity in its status. There are degrees of sanctity, but they all share one aspect: ultimate preciousness. To sense the sacred is to sense what is dear to God. Its mode of being differs from the modes of being of other qualities. It is true that sacred objects are objects set apart from the rest of reality, but it is a mistake to regard the sacred and the profane as absolute contrasts. For some parts of reality to be endowed with sanctity, all of reality must be a reflection of sanctity. Reality embraces the actually sacred and the potentially sacred. That was from the wonderful book, Who is Man? By Abraham J. Heschel. Kabbalist, artist, writer extraordinaire, Carlo Suarès lived from 1892 to 1976. You are about to hear an excerpt from his The Second Coming of Reb Yehoshua. Note, when Carlo says the word rabbi, he is referring to Yehoshua, known to many as Jesus. Carlo begins with some words from the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus said, "Know, what is in thy sight and what is hidden from thee will be revealed to thee. For there is nothing hidden which will not be manifest." And now for Carlo. People say that when Abraham, our father, received the breath of life and became Avram, he looked and saw, he listened and heard, he touched and felt, he thought and understood, because he had received the following injunction: leave the house of your father, leave the land of your birth, and go, lech lecha, towards yourself, in the country that I will indicate. And Abraham, with part of his family, left the land of the Chaldees and led his step toward Canaan. That was the promised land, cursed by Noah. Go toward yourself in the vast universe. That is what I had understood. I walked a very long time, and I finally found myself in a very big city, where I now am, while writing these lines. It is one of those cities where the streets and the street corners are at times under dark skies and at times under highly lighted ceilings. It was the hour when in the big cities spring multitudes of lights of all colors, the hour when compact crowds of those who have done their daily work hurry in confused floods. I was alone, and I was meditating, as I always do, by looking at the faces of those passing by. I was also looking at the fantastic scenery all around me that I cannot describe. I see it every day, but it astonishes me every time. And I think of the words of the Rabbi, asking to know what is in my sight so that the hidden is revealed. He probably was mentioning his own presence, facing his disciple, but inside every passerby, it was the Rabbi that I was seeing, who, alas, was weeping and lamenting when those faces asserted ruthlessly there, I am. And I look again at those crowds who so long taught themselves to look without seeing that they have ceased to look. They knock each other and squash each other, but they do not see each other. And I among them was invisible, and the kingdom saw them and read the secrets of every one of their faces. And I thought, the Rabbi is quite right. I must trust appearances. It is my look upon them that I must distrust, because seeing, really seeing, is bringing the kingdom in. It is communicating. And I thought about all those who shut themselves in order to meditate, who sit in isolation and take postures and seek the kingdom in silence, protected by walls. Alone or in organized groups, those people communicate only with themselves and find peace of a sort, the peace of their longings. You are about to hear the parable of Halaj's ashes. It was composed by Sheikh Farid ud Din Attar. He lived in the northeast region of Iran from 1145 through 1220 Common Era. This parable has been brought into the English by Sholeh Wolpe, herself from Iran. Sholeh has two stunning, as in take one's breath away, stunning books, translations of Attar out. The Invisible Sun is published by Harper, and from Norton Press, The Conference of the Birds, from which the parable of Halaj's ashes will be read. Yet first, a brief introduction to Halaj. Mansur al-Halaj lived from 825 through 922 Common Era. Halaj, the Sufi, was condemned of heresy and infamously burned alive for uttering, "I am truth," or "I am God." Throughout the passing centuries, scholars and wayfarers contend that al-Halaj was condemned because his popular spirited teachings were filling the orthodox religious establishment with jealousy. Parable of Halaj's ashes. When Halaj's body had completely burned into ash, a lover came and sat by what remained, rummaging through the great man's ashes, wailing, "Tell me the truth. Where is the man who cried out, 'I am God'? All that you have uttered, all that you have heard, all that you knew, all that you have seen, all of it from the very start is just the beginning of the fairy tale. Disappear. This rune is not your abode. What matters is the essence of truth, independent and pure. What does it matter if truth branches or not? When the true sun shines eternal, does it matter if here is an atom or here its shadow? Now, for two pieces composed by Poetess Laureate of the Colorado Front Range, Maria Berardi. For God is the simplest of all, that the vast, harsh, gorgeous, dark, endlessly cold, empty, is also twinkle, twinkle, and lyres and scorpions, a mother bear and her cub. This is it, isn't it? Balance, valence, zooming in, zooming out. This helpless worship of each other, the love that moves the sun and other stars. Only here among the humans, this love with which we see everything, no meaning, but we make it, no other meaning needed. Maria calls this one oceanic. The great firs whispering their own name, and the pines pining, and I pining, Since I was 4 years old, I have wanted to merge with the iron gray rain clouds on the horizon, with the cold of the deep lake, with the restless rustling of the trees deep in night. In that rain, that rippling, that rustling, rest. A beauty that devastates me and claims me as its own uncaring nature, open in alarming embrace. Since I was a small child, this. Have I always been flying to, diving into this dissolution, the molecules of me dispersing, entering eternity? One from the reader. In heaven, there is an ocean filled with the beloved's tears, shed for those who did not pass through its gates. Even the angels dare not swim there. You are about to hear words composed by Rav Kook about a century ago. Rav Kook did much of his writing in Hebrew. Rachel Tova Ebner spent 40 years of her life bringing the Rav's words, bringing his poetic voice into English. Rachel's translations, The Torah of Tomorrow, One Song, came out in 2025 by Mosaic Press. It's a work of art all the way around, a truly fine book. This piece is entitled Uniting the Spirit of the Masses with the Highest Ideals. The intelligentsia thinks it can split itself off from the masses so as to become healthier in its spirit, nobler in its thinking. This is a fundamental error, a mistake that does not recognize the healthy aspect of natural perceptions, natural feelings, natural senses, which may not yet have been perfected, but which have also not been corrupted by any cultural influence. The healthy aspect of honesty is much, much more common among coarser folk than it is among learned, ethical thinkers. The learned ones shine when it comes to particular matters of morality, its rules, its fine points. But the essence of its feeling, this is found among healthy, natural people who constitute the masses, the common folk. And it is not only in their deep-rooted feeling of morality that the masses surpass the gifted ones, they are also better at feeling faith, feeling the enormity of God, beauty, sensuality. Everything that belongs to life in a direct way, unfiltered through channels clogged with the mournful silt of knowledge and wisdom, is healthier and purer among the masses. The masses, on their own, however, would be unable to protect their own essence and purity. They cannot solidly integrate their concepts, nor do they know how to step up and enlist in the war when clashing and mutually contradictory perceptions and feelings do battle inside one's soul or in the outside world. For this, the masses need the help of those who are in great wisdom, who smooth out the world paths confronting them. But just as the wise influence the masses with advice and wisdom, so do the masses influence the wise in healthy living. This mutuality between the spiritual nobility and the masses is the energy that keeps each side well balanced and protects them from any corruption and degeneration, whether moral or material. Prophecy, which comes from the divine channel, comes precisely for the sake of this goal. The unification of the spirit of the masses with the aristocratic spirit, a capacity exclusive to uniquely graced individuals. in prophecy, the idiom of the masses, and the ideal thought of the spiritually wealthy unite. One of the most uniquely graced individuals of all time was Etty Hillesum. Etty vanished from the flesh in Auschwitz in 1943 at the age of 29. You are about to listen to one of the last entries she made in her notebooks in September 1943. The notebooks miraculously survived and came to the attention of the public 40 years after Etty's murder. Words from her notebooks have been compiled into a book titled An Interrupted Life, The Diaries of Etty Hillesum, 1941 through 1943. Here is Etty's words. With a sharp pang, all of suffering mankind's nocturnal distress and loneliness passes now through my small heart. What shall I be taking upon myself this winter? One day, I would love to travel through all the world. Oh God, I feel drawn right across all frontiers and feel a bond with all your warring creatures. And I would like to proclaim that bond in a small, still voice, but also compellingly and without pause. But first I must be present on every battlefront and at the center of all human suffering. Give me a small line of verse from time to time, O God, and if I cannot write it down for lack of paper or light, then let me address it softly in the evening to your great heaven. But please give me a small line of verse now and then. We're going to end this episode of Before the Page with a short poem from Li Po, who lived from the year 701 through 762. Before reading the poem, we would be remiss if we didn't mention how Li Po passed. One night, he was out drunk in a boat, and he fell into a river and drowned. He was trying to embrace the moon. This piece is entitled Wandering Up Ample Gauze Creek on a Spring Day. At the canyon's mouth, I am singing. Soon the path ends. People don't go any higher. I scramble up cliffs into impossible valleys and follow the creek back toward its source. Up where newborn clouds rise over open rock, a guest come into wildflower confusions. I'm still lingering on, my climb unfinished, as the sun sinks away west of peaks galore. And that piece was brought into the English by David Hinton. Thank you all so very, very much for listening to this episode of Before the Page. Be sanctified. Be blessed. Until the next.